TIFU by selling my sister-in-law's MacBook after she kept calling me mom. Hashtag chunk one. I'm staring at the MacBook like it's a loaded gun sitting on my kitchen counter. It's a 16-inch Pro, silver, pristine except for a small scratch near the trackpad that I'm certain wasn't there before. I know this because I've memorized every detail of this laptop over the past 6 hours, the weight of it, the way it feels warm when I pick it up, the distinctive Apple logo that catches the afternoon light streaming through my window. I've also memorized it because I keep trying to convince myself that what I'm about to do is actually happening. My name is Jessica, and I'm about to commit what might be the most impulsive, reckless act of my entire 38 years of living. And honestly, I don't even care anymore. Let me back up. 3 years ago, my husband Mark and I started trying for a baby. At first, it was this exciting thing, tracking my cycle, picking out nursery colors in my head, imagining what our kids would look like. My sister-in-law Rachel thought it was hilarious to comment on all of this. Better hurry up before your eggs get too old, she'd laugh at Thanksgiving. Mark, are you sure you're doing it right, at Christmas? Just relentless, casual cruelty disguised as jokes. We did fertility treatments. 2 rounds of IVF. The second one worked, and I spent the most blissful 8 weeks of my life convinced I finally had my happy ending. I was pregnant. I picked out actual cribs. I told my family. I told everyone. Then, at 8 weeks and 4 days, I miscarried. It was last month. It was devastating in a way I'm still not entirely equipped to describe even now. My husband was wonderful during it. Truly. He held me through 3 days of bleeding and cramping and the worst emotional devastation I've ever experienced. He took time off work. He held my hand in the doctor's office when they confirmed the heartbeat was gone. He was there in every way that mattered. But his family? That's where things get complicated. Rachel found out about the miscarriage, I'm still not entirely sure how, because Mark said he only told his mother, and she showed up at a family dinner like she was arriving to a party. This was 2 weeks after I lost the baby. 2 weeks. I was still emotionally raw, still experiencing waves of grief that would knock me sideways at random moments. Hey, Jessica, she called out as she came through the door, and I felt Mark tense beside me. How are you feeling? Must be nice not having to worry about morning sickness anymore, right? I remember the silence that followed. That awful, thick silence where everyone pretended they didn't hear what she said. I looked at Mark. He looked at his shoes. That was the beginning. After that, Rachel started this thing where she'd call me mom whenever we were around family. Not in a warm way. In a dripping, poisoned way that made everyone around us squirm. Oh mom, what are you making for dinner? Mom, have you thought about your biological clock lately? You'd make such a great mom, Jessica, once you figure out how to not lose the baby. That last one was at my mother-in-law's house on Thanksgiving. She said it loudly enough that the whole dining room heard. I excused myself and cried in the bathroom for 15 minutes. When I came back, Mark had barely glanced at her. He didn't say a word. Not one word. I begged him to tell his family to stop. I begged him to set a boundary. He kept saying he would handle it, but he never actually did. He'd give Rachel a week, come on, that's not cool if she did it right in front of him, but there were no real consequences. No ultimatums. No, if you ever speak to my wife that way again, you're not welcome in our home. Just silence. And more silence. The cruelty escalated. At a birthday dinner for Mark's father 2 weeks ago, Rachel called me mom no less than 7 times in one evening, each iteration more vicious than the last. When I finally stood up to leave, my voice shaking, Mark followed me out and told me I was being oversensitive and that I needed to stop letting her get to you. Stop letting her get to me. As if I could simply choose not to be hurt when my sister-in-law was weaponizing my infertility and miscarriage against me at every possible opportunity. As if my pain was a switch I could flip off to keep the peace. That was when something inside me broke. Not in a sad way. In an angry way. Last Sunday, Rachel came over for dinner at our place. She brought the MacBook with her, apparently she'd been using it earlier in the day and forgotten it. Toward the end of dinner, she made some comment about how some people just aren't meant to be moms, and maybe that's okay. She was smiling when she said it. That was the part that really got me, the smile. I felt something crack open inside my chest, some final dam breaking. She left without the laptop. Didn't even realize she'd forgotten it. I stared at it sitting on our counter, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had power in this situation. Real power. Not the fake kind where I'm supposed to rise above or take the high road or whatever other bullshit people say when they want you to absorb abuse quietly. Her laptop was worth about $2,800. I know this because I spent 3 hours researching it, looking at eBay listings, checking its specs, running the numbers. My fertility clinic has a program for people who can't afford continued treatment. I've been staring at their donation page for the past 6 months, wanting to give back, wanting to contribute, but unable to justify the expense right now. The donation that would make the biggest impact? It's exactly $2,800. The irony is so perfectly poetic that I almost laugh. Almost. I pick up the MacBook. It's heavier than I expected, or maybe I'm just acutely aware of its weight now, acutely aware of what it represents. A consequence. A real, tangible, expensive consequence for someone who has been making my life hell. My hands are shaking as I open my laptop and start setting up the eBay listing. I know exactly what I'm about to do, and I know exactly how badly it's going to end. But for the first time in 3 years, I don't care about the fallout. I'm done being quiet. Hashtag chunk 2. The eBay listing goes live at 11:47 p.m. I hit publish and then immediately close my laptop like the screen might burn me. My heart is hammering so hard I can feel it in my throat. The MacBook is sitting next to me on the couch, dark and silent, like it's waiting for me to come to my senses. I don't come to my senses. Instead, I sit there for another hour, refreshing the listing obsessively. No bids yet. Of course there aren't bids yet, it's almost midnight on a Tuesday. But my anxiety doesn't care about logic. It wants me to catastrophize about every possible outcome, and boy, is it delivering. Mark comes home from his late shift at the hospital around 1 a.m. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon, which means his hours are already unpredictable, which means he hasn't been home for dinner in 3 weeks. Which means he also hasn't been home to witness most of Rachel's recent cruelty firsthand, a fact that I'm sure comforts his conscience tremendously. I hear him moving around downstairs, probably making a sandwich or checking his phone for messages. I consider going down to talk to him, to maybe confess what I've done before it explodes in our faces, but I don't. Instead, I lie in bed with my phone clutched in my hand, watching the listing like it might suddenly detonate. By morning, there are 3 bids. I wake up at 6 a.m., which is unusual for me since I've been sleeping terribly for months, and the first thing I do is check my phone. 3 bids, the highest at $2,100. My stomach does a complicated flip, relief mixed with absolute dread. This is really happening. It's not just a moment of fury anymore, it's an action with momentum, with consequences barreling toward us like a train I can't stop. I get out of bed carefully, trying not to wake Mark, and tiptoe downstairs. The MacBook is exactly where I left it on the couch, and for a surreal moment I wonder if I dreamed the whole thing. If I imagine setting up the listing, if this is some kind of stress-induced fantasy. But no. The listing is real. I can see it on my laptop. Apple MacBook Pro 16-inch, 2021 model, excellent condition. Buy it now $2,800 or best offer. I've written a detailed description. I've uploaded 12 photos. I've documented every spec like I'm writing a scientific paper about the death of my marriage. My phone buzzes. A text from Mark's mother, Carol. Hi honey. Rachel mentioned she left her laptop at your place. She's in a panic because she has work files on it. Can you believe how scatterbrained she is? Anyway, could you have Mark bring it to Sunday dinner? Thanks so much. The text came through at 5:47 a.m. Rachel has already noticed it's missing. I stare at the message for so long that my phone screen goes dark. Then I turn it back on and read it again. The casual tone. The assumption that of course I'll just hand it back. The way Carol refers to Rachel's carelessness like it's an endearing personality quirk rather than a symptom of someone who's never faced a consequence in her life. I don't respond. By 9 a.m., there are 5 bids, and the price is up to $2,550. By noon, there are 8 bids and $2,680. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing. Carol has texted twice more, each message slightly more urgent. Rachel has called, actually called, like this is an emergency, and left a voicemail that's sickeningly sweet in tone but sharp with panic underneath. Hey Jess, I realized I left my laptop at your place on Sunday. Could you maybe text me when you find it? I have some important work stuff on there. Thanks so much. Important work stuff. Rachel works in social media marketing. I'm sure her important work stuff is absolutely critical to the functioning of society. Mark finds me in the kitchen staring at nothing around 1 p.m. You okay? He asks, and there's something in his voice that makes me realize he's already aware something is wrong. He can read me like this, even after 3 years of slow erosion. Rachel left her laptop here, I say carefully. Oh, okay. We can bring it to Sunday dinner. No big deal. I sold it. The words hang in the air between us like something toxic. You, what? Mark's voice gets very quiet. Very careful. The voice he uses when someone is having a heart attack. I sold her MacBook. It's listed on eBay. We're at $2,750 right now with 2 hours left in the auction. I watch his face go through about 7 different emotions in rapid succession. Confusion. Then confusion turning into understanding. Then understanding turning into something that might be horror or might be anger or might be both. Jessica. Tell me you're joking. I'm not joking. You sold her laptop. Her personal laptop. That she left at our house. Yes. Why would you? He stops. Closes his eyes. Opens them again. Why would you do that? And now I'm crying, which I didn't anticipate, which I don't have time for, but here we are. Because she's been torturing me, I say, and my voice is shaking. She's been torturing me for months, and you won't stop her. You won't tell your family to stop her. You just keep telling me to get over it, to not be so sensitive, to let it go. Well, I'm not letting it go. I'm done. I'm done being the person who absorbs everyone else's cruelty and smiles and thanks them for it. So you stole her laptop. I'm selling it for a fertility clinic donation. Mark stares at me. His jaw is working like he's trying to process the words, but his brain keeps rejecting them. That's not your laptop to sell, Jessica. That's theft. That's literally theft. Do you understand that? Regardless of how justified you feel, that's still a crime. I don't care. You should care. You should care very much, because Rachel is already texting my mother, and my mother is going to call, and this is going to blow up into something that we can't come back from. Maybe I don't want to come back from it, I say quietly. My phone buzzes. Another bid. We're at $2,780 now. Mark looks at my phone, then back at me, and I watch something shift in his expression. Something like he's seeing me clearly for the first time in months. And he doesn't like what he sees. Cancel the listing, he says finally. No. Jessica, I'm serious. Cancel it right now. No, I say again, and I mean it with every fiber of my being. He walks out of the kitchen without another word. The auction ends at 3:47 p.m. Final price, $2,895. I transfer the money to the fertility clinic before I can think about it anymore. Then I wait for the explosion. Hashtag chunk 3. The explosion doesn't come as a phone call. It comes as a knock on the door at 4:15 p.m. I'm sitting in the living room with my laptop open, staring at the confirmation email from the fertility clinic, when I hear it. Not a normal knock, a sharp, aggressive series of raps that makes me jump. I know immediately who it is. I can feel it in my bones. Mark is upstairs in our bedroom. He's been there since our kitchen confrontation, and I haven't heard a peep from him in 3 hours. The silence has been suffocating, worse than any screaming match could have been. But at least now I know what betrayal feels like when it's coming from the person who's supposed to have your back. The knock comes again, harder this time. I know you're home, Rachel's voice pierces through the door. I can see your car. Open up. I don't move. I sit frozen on the couch, my heart doing that same hammering thing it's been doing all day. This is it. This is the moment where everything becomes real and irreversible. Jessica. Another knock. Come on, this isn't funny. Where's my laptop? I force myself to stand. My legs feel like they're made of something that isn't quite bone. I open the door to find Rachel standing on the porch in yoga clothes, her blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail, her face flushed with a combination of anger and panic that's almost satisfying to see. Hi Rachel, I say, and I'm amazed by how steady my voice sounds. Where is it? She doesn't waste time on pleasantries. My laptop. Mom said you had it. I did have it, I say carefully. Not anymore. Her face goes very still. What do you mean, not anymore? Did you break it? Did you lose it? Jesus, Jessica, that laptop cost me $3,200. I know what it cost, I say. I sold it. For a moment, I don't think she's understood me. Her brain is clearly trying to process the words in some way that makes sense. Her mouth opens and closes like a fish pulled from water. You sold my laptop? Yes. You sold my personal property without my permission? Yes. Are you insane? Her voice rises to a pitch that probably violates some kind of noise ordinance. You can't just sell someone else's laptop. That's not legal. That's theft. I'm aware, I say. The money went to a good cause. Rachel's face goes redder. She actually looks like she might be having a medical emergency. A good cause? Jessica, you stole from me. Do you understand what that means? I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I say, and I realize I've been waiting my entire life to say those words to someone and mean them. Call the police. Call whoever you want. But you should know that I have months of text messages from your mother, from your sister, from you, documenting exactly how cruel you've been to me. I have witnesses at every family dinner where you've made jokes about my miscarriage, about my infertility, about my empty womb. So yes, please. Call the police. Let's have a real conversation about consequence for once. Rachel's jaw clamps shut. I can see her trying to calculate whether I'm bluffing, whether the documentation I'm describing is real and admissible and damaging. Her eyes have a cornered animal quality to them now. You're a crazy person, she finally says, but her voice has lost some of its venom. It's been replaced with something more like fear. You know that, right? Selling someone's laptop because they said mean things? You're completely unhinged. Maybe, I say. Maybe I am. But I'm done caring what you think. My parents are going to sue you for the full value, Rachel says, and now she's desperately throwing threats out there like grenades, hoping one of them will stick. They have lawyers. They have money. You're going to regret this. Probably, I agree. But at least I'll regret it knowing I finally did something instead of just suffering in silence while my own husband told me to get over it. That's when Mark appears in the hallway behind me. I didn't hear him come downstairs. He's still in his hospital scrubs, his hair disheveled, his face a mask of exhaustion and something else I can't quite name. Rachel, you need to leave, he says quietly. Rachel blinks at him. She sold my laptop, Mark. Your wife is a thief. I know what she did, Mark says. He doesn't look at me when he says it. And I'm telling you to leave our property right now, or I'm calling the police for trespassing and harassment. There's a beat of silence where Rachel clearly recalibrates her entire strategy. She'd been expecting him to back her up, to team up with her against me. The fact that he's not, or at least, the fact that he's removing her from the property, seems to temporarily derail her. This is insane, she mutters, but she's already backing away from the door. My parents are going to hear about this. All of this. You're both crazy. Mark closes the door without responding. For a long moment, neither of us speaks. I can hear the sound of Rachel's car starting up outside, the aggressive rev of the engine as she takes out her fury on the vehicle. We need to talk, Mark says finally. I know, I say. Not right now, he adds, and there's something in his voice that makes me realize he's barely holding himself together. I can't do this right now. I have to go back to the hospital. There's a scheduled surgery at 5. Mark. I don't want to hear it, he says, and he walks back toward the stairs. I don't want to hear your justifications or your reasoning or anything else right now. I need to think. I need to figure out if I'm married to someone who, he stops. Takes a breath. I just need to think. He goes upstairs. I hear him moving around the bedroom, hear the shower turn on, hear him moving through the motions of preparing for work like we haven't just detonated our entire life. I sit back down on the couch. My phone buzzes, a notification from the fertility clinic, thanking me for my donation and providing me with information about their next consultation slots. I stare at it for a long time. I've made my mark. I've done the thing. I finally stood up instead of sat down. But sitting here in the silence, watching my husband disappear into his work to escape me, I'm starting to wonder if victory has ever felt quite this much like loss. #Chunk4. The house is silent after Mark leaves for the hospital. I listen to him grab his keys from the kitchen counter, listen to his car pull out of the driveway with more speed than necessary, and then I'm alone with the weight of what I've done. I make tea. I don't know why, some part of me thinks that if I perform the rituals of normalcy, the day might retroactively become normal. But the mug feels heavy in my hands, and the tea tastes like copper and regret. My phone won't stop buzzing. First it's a text from Mark's mother. Rachel is very upset. Call me. Then Mark's sister, what the hell is going on? Did you really sell Rachel's computer? Then a call from my own mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. And another. My notifications are piling up like snow in a blizzard, messages in a family group chat that Mark hasn't muted, individual texts, even an email forwarded from someone's work account. I turn my phone face down on the coffee table. For approximately 7 minutes, I feel like I've won something. I replay Rachel's face when she realized I was serious. I replay Mark stepping in, telling her to leave, taking my side in his own understated way. But then the silence starts to feel less like victory and more like a held breath before a car crash. At 6:47 p.m., my mother calls again. This time I answer because the anxiety of not answering is worse than whatever she's about to say. Jessica, what on earth were you thinking? Her voice is tight, controlled in that way that means she's angrier than she's ever been. Hi, Mom. Don't hi Mom me. Do you have any idea what you've done? Mark's mother is saying she's going to take legal action. She's talking about pressing charges for theft. Jessica, this is serious. I know it's serious, I say quietly. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you had some kind of breakdown and committed what is literally a crime. You can't just steal someone's property because you're angry at them. She's been torturing me, I say, and I can hear my voice starting to crack. 4 months. 4 months, Mom, she's been making fun of my miscarriage, making jokes about my infertility, and nobody did anything. Nobody told her to stop. So no, I didn't think, I did something. There's a pause on the other end of the line. I know Rachel has been unkind, my mother says carefully. But this, Jessica, this is not the answer. This makes you look unstable. This makes it look like you had some kind of mental episode. Maybe I did, I say. Maybe that's what it takes to get people to understand that they can't just treat you like this. Selling her laptop isn't standing up for yourself. It's revenge. There's a difference, and unfortunately, the law recognizes that difference too. We talk for another 20 minutes. My mother cycles through anger, disappointment, and a kind of resigned sadness that somehow feels worse than the anger. She tells me that Mark's mother has already contacted a lawyer. She tells me that the family is divided. Some people think Rachel deserved it, others think I'm unhinged. Most people are just terrified of the legal fallout and the chaos. She tells me that Mark's family is close, and Mark's mother doesn't forgive easily. Your marriage, my mother says finally, and I can hear the weight in those 2 words. Jessica, how is Mark really? He's at work. He didn't want to talk about it. That's not what I'm asking. How is he with you? I don't have an answer for that. The truth is, I don't know. Mark's silence feels different from his previous silence. Less like the default setting of a checked-out partner and more like the silence of someone actively recalibrating who they're married to. I don't know, I admit. My mother sighs. You might want to call him. Or maybe call a therapist. Or both. Actually, definitely both. After we hang up, I sit in the quiet of my house and do something I haven't done in months. I cry. Not the sad, wounded crying I've been doing since my miscarriage. This is different. This is the kind of crying that comes from the realization that you've nuked something from orbit hoping it would kill the thing that was hurting you, but you're not entirely sure what else you incinerated in the process. My phone buzzes again. A text from an unknown number. This is Rachel's father. You will be hearing from our lawyer regarding the theft of property valued at $3,200. You have 48 hours to replace the laptop or we will pursue legal action. I stare at those words for a long time. The money is gone. I transferred it to the fertility clinic, and I meant it when I did it. But reading this message, I realize that I may have just made it impossible for Mark and me to afford a lawyer of our own if this actually goes to court. At 8:15 p.m., Mark texts, I'm going to sleep at the hospital. In the on-call room. Don't wait up. That sentence does something to me that all the other ones haven't managed. It's the word don't. The assumption that he's not coming home. That he can't face me right now, or maybe can't face coming home, and I'm not sure which one is worse. I reply, okay. I'm sorry. He doesn't respond. I spend the evening researching whether what I did is actually illegal. The answers are murky and contradictory, depending on whether the laptop was abandoned or entrusted to me, whether I had implied permission to be in possession of it, what state laws actually say about this kind of property dispute. Some sources suggest it's theft. Others suggest it's civil, not criminal. Some suggest that Rachel's harassment could actually be a mitigating factor. None of it makes me feel better. At 11 p.m., I lie in bed in the dark and wonder if my husband is lying in an on-call room at the hospital, staring at a ceiling, trying to figure out how to be married to the kind of person who would do what I just did. I wonder if he's asking himself whether he made a mistake marrying me. I wonder if he's thinking about all the ways this is going to cost us, legally, financially, emotionally. I wonder if I've just traded my dignity for something far worse, the knowledge that I got it, and it wasn't worth the price. #chunk 5. The next morning, I wake to my phone ringing at 6:47 a.m., the exact same time my mother called yesterday, though I doubt that's a coincidence. It's Mark's mother. I let it go to voicemail. She calls again immediately. The third time, I answer because maybe ignoring her will somehow make this worse. Jessica. Her voice is like ice water. We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea right now, I say carefully. Not until we both have legal representation. I'm not calling as a lawyer. I'm calling as your mother-in-law, and I'm calling to tell you that you have made a catastrophic mistake. I say nothing. The silence stretches between us like a chasm. Rachel is devastated, she continues. Do you understand what you've done to her? That laptop had her entire senior thesis on it. Her portfolio. Months of work for her graphic design applications. She has 3 deadlines coming up. You didn't just steal a computer. You potentially destroyed her future. The words hit like a physical blow. I hadn't thought about the contents. Somehow, in my fury, I'd reduced the MacBook to a symbol, a weapon, a lever to make someone finally understand my pain. I hadn't thought about Rachel as a person with her own deadlines and dreams and work that mattered. I didn't know, I hear myself say. No, you didn't know. You didn't care. You were so focused on hurting her that you didn't bother to consider the actual consequences. And now my daughter might lose scholarships because of your revenge fantasy. It wasn't about revenge, I say, but even as I say it, I know it's a lie. It was exactly about revenge. What was it about then? Mark's mother asks, and there's something almost curious in her tone now, like she genuinely wants to understand how I could be this person. Help me understand how selling my daughter's computer helps you with your fertility issues. It was a donation. I donated the money to a fertility clinic. So you stole from Rachel and laundered it through charity to make yourself feel better about yourself. That's what you're telling me. Put that way, it sounds obscene. It sounds like a rationalization of someone unhinged. Mark told me to stop, I say quietly. During the visit, he told her to stop calling me mom. Mark told her to use better judgment. That's not the same as defending you. That's not the same as giving you permission to commit a crime. After she hangs up, or after I hang up, it's hard to tell who ends it. I sit on the edge of the bed and Google graphic design thesis portfolio. I find Rachel's Instagram. Her work is actually good. Really good. Clean, modern, with an eye for color theory that I recognize as talent, even through my fog of justified anger. There are pictures of her working late, holding coffee cups, smiling at her laptop. There are progress photos of projects that don't exist anymore because I sold the machine they lived on. I call Mark. He doesn't answer. I text, did you know about her thesis? He responds 20 minutes later, yes. Just that. One word. I wait for more, but nothing comes. I try, I didn't know. I'm sorry. The 3 dots appear and disappear 3 times before he writes, I know you didn't. And I'm not sure if that's forgiveness or just the saddest acknowledgement of how little I understand about the people around me. The rest of the day unfolds like a nightmare I can't wake from. Around 10 a.m., there's a knock on my door. It's a woman with a clipboard and a very official demeanor. Jessica Morrison? My heart drops into my stomach. Yes? You've been served. She hands me a sheaf of papers. Have a good day. I stare at the envelope in my hands. The lawsuit is real now. Not hypothetical, not something that might happen. It's happening. They're suing me for the full value of the laptop, $3,200, plus damages for the lost work and the cost of recovering her files from cloud backups and reconstruction. The total amount is $8,547. I sit down on my front steps and read the papers 3 times. The language is cold and formal, and it describes me as a person I don't recognize, negligent, vindictive, in breach of implied bailment. The lawyers have spelled everything out with excruciating precision. By afternoon, I've called 3 different attorneys. The cheapest one quotes me $1,500 just for an initial consultation and representation through the discovery phase. The others are higher. All of them tell me the same thing, I have a weak position. The law generally doesn't care why you sold someone's property. It cares that you did it. Your best defense, one attorney tells me, would be to argue that the laptop was abandoned on your property, and therefore you had the right to dispose of it. But given that you actively sold it online, that's going to be hard to prove. And if she testifies that she asked for it back and you refused, you're looking at intentional conversion, which is worse than negligent conversion. What does that mean in terms of money? Worst case? They could ask for punitive damages. Multiple times the actual value of a laptop. Mark comes home at 6 p.m. He looks exhausted in a way that sleep won't fix. He sets his bag down by the door and doesn't look at me. I got served, I tell him. I know. My mom called me. The lawsuit is for over $8,000. He winces. That's more than they originally said. We can't afford this, Mark. We can't afford a lawyer. We can barely afford, I break off. We've been rebuilding our savings after the fertility treatments. The legal fees would demolish what little we have left. I know, he says quietly. I didn't know about her thesis, I add. I didn't think about. I know, he says again, and this time he finally looks at me. His eyes are sad in a way that's worse than anger. That's the problem, though. You didn't think. And now we're both paying for it. What do you want me to do? I ask, and I can hear the desperation in my voice. Mark sits down on the couch and puts his head in his hands. I don't know, he says. I honestly don't know anymore. The silence that follows is heavy with the weight of all the things we're not saying, about my marriage, about my dignity, about the price of standing up for yourself when the bill comes due and you realize you may have asked for too much. #chunk 6. The next week is a study in how quickly a life can fracture along invisible fault lines. Mark and I don't fight. Fighting would almost be better, at least it would be honest. Instead, we exist in our house like 2 people sharing a hotel room, polite and distant and profoundly alone. He leaves early for work. I hear him in the shower before dawn. He comes home late, sometimes claiming he stopped at the gym, though I notice his gym bag never actually smells like sweat. When he's home, he occupies the same space as I'm in but with a buffer of at least 3 feet between us at all times. We eat dinner at different times. We sleep with our backs to each other, a geography of coldness that wasn't there before. I keep expecting him to tell me to move out, to say he needs space, to suggest we separate. Part of me thinks maybe I deserve that. But he doesn't say anything, which somehow feels worse. At least a break would be a decision. This limbo feels like punishment. Dr. Chen's office calls on Wednesday. I almost don't answer. Ms. Morrison, we received your donation last week, the woman on the phone says brightly. We wanted to thank you personally and let you know that your generous contribution will help fund our research into recurrent miscarriage patterns. You should feel very proud. The irony is so sharp I almost laugh. Thank you, I say instead. We're hoping you'll be interested in volunteering with us, she continues. We have several peer support groups that meet. I hang up. I don't mean to be rude, but I can't listen to her talk about my donation like it was some noble act of charity instead of what it actually was, theft dressed up in the language of good intentions. That afternoon, my own mother calls. Your sister-in-law's mother contacted me, she says, getting straight to the point. She's good at that. She's very upset, Jessica. I'm sure she is. Don't take that tone with me. I didn't raise you to be a thief. She's been torturing me for months. And that gives you the right to destroy her career? Do you understand what you've done? That girl could lose her full ride scholarship if she can't submit her portfolio on time. I've been trying very hard not to think about that specific detail. She could have just stopped being cruel. She could have just let me exist without mocking me about something that's destroyed my life. So she was cruel, and your response was to be criminal. That's very grown up, Jessica. We don't speak after that. I don't return her calls. Mark tells me she's been calling him, too, and that she's very disappointed in both of us, which somehow manages to be worse than if she'd yelled. Friday afternoon, I get an email from the attorney representing Rachel's family. My own lawyer had warned me this might happen. It's an offer to settle. Rachel's family will drop the lawsuit if I agree to pay $6,200 immediately and complete 40 hours of community service. They'll also require a written apology that they reserve the right to share with anyone they choose. A written apology. A documented acknowledgement of wrongdoing that will exist forever, that could be screenshotted and shared, that will follow me into whatever comes next in my life. They're being generous, my lawyer tells me when I call him in a panic. A judge could award her more. And you avoid the risk of a trial, which could go badly. Can they really require a public apology? Can they make me apologize in writing where? They can require it as a condition of the settlement. You don't have to agree to it. But if this goes to trial and you lose, you'll owe them the money anyway, plus potentially much more in damages. And it will still be public. Court records are public. I feel the trap closing around me from all sides. There's no good exit here. There's only varying degrees of bad. That evening, I tell Mark about the settlement offer. He's quiet for a long time. $6,000 we don't have, he finally says. I know. And 40 hours of community service. And an apology. I know. What do you want to do? I don't know, I say, and I realize I'm crying. I hadn't even noticed it starting. I feel like I'm trapped. Either I pay them money I don't have and apologize and let them define me as a terrible person, or I go to trial and probably lose anyway and become an even more defined version of that terrible person. You could try talking to Rachel directly, Mark says quietly. Not through lawyers. Just talk to her. She doesn't want to talk to me. She's suing me. Her parents are suing you. Rachel might feel different. She's 22. She's probably pretty devastated about her thesis, but she might also understand why he stops himself. Why I what? Why I committed a crime because I was sad. I wasn't going to say that. But you were thinking it. He doesn't deny it. I'm trying to understand how we got here, he says instead. How we went from you being someone who deserves protection to you being someone who does things that require a criminal defense. She hurt me. I know. And that wasn't okay. But Jessica, he gestures vaguely at the legal papers spread across our coffee table. This is also not okay. And now it's not just her hurting you anymore. Now I'm hurt. Now Rachel's probably hurt. Now we're all in pain, and the only person who benefited from any of this is the lawyer who's about to charge us thousands of dollars. I want to argue with him, but he's right. I can feel the rightness of it like a physical thing, settling into my chest. I made everything worse. I didn't stand up for myself, I just weaponized my pain and fired it in every direction. I don't know how to fix this, I whisper. I don't think you can, Mark says, and that's when I finally understand that we might actually be broken in a way that apologies won't repair. #Chunk7. I decide to contact Rachel directly on a Sunday morning when Mark is still asleep. It's a cowardly choice in some ways. I'm doing it before he wakes up, before he can talk me out of it or ask what I'm doing. But it's also the only brave thing I can think to do, because I'm reaching out without any expectation that it will help me. I'm just reaching. I find her on Instagram. She has a private account, but her profile picture shows her in front of what looks like an art installation, something sculptural and impressive looking. Her bio says designer plus artist and lists a link to her portfolio website. My stomach twists. The portfolio she might not be able to submit now. I sent her a direct message. Rachel, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I understand that completely. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to say that I was wrong, and I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know. I stare at the message for 5 minutes before hitting send. It feels inadequate. It is inadequate. But it's all I have. She doesn't respond immediately. Of course she doesn't. I spend the rest of Sunday refreshing the app compulsively, checking my email, waiting for some sign that the door I've cracked open might lead somewhere. By Monday morning, there's still nothing. Mark notices I'm quiet and asks if I'm okay. I tell him I contacted Rachel. He doesn't say anything, which I'm learning is his way of saying he's disappointed but too tired to argue about it anymore. Tuesday morning, I wake up to a notification. Rachel has replied, we should probably talk in person. Not with lawyers present. Can you meet me tomorrow at the coffee shop on Madison? 11 a.m.? My first instinct is relief. My second is panic. What if she just wants to tell me in person how much she hates me? What if this makes everything worse? But that's the calculus I'm stuck in now. Everything is already worse, so at least this way I'll know exactly how worse. I tell Mark. He just says, okay, which is so neutral it might as well be a condemnation. Do you want me to come with you? He adds after a pause. No, I say. I think I need to do this alone. He nods and goes back to his coffee. We still haven't touched each other in any meaningful way. Not a hug, not a hand on the arm. Just this careful distance that's become the architecture of our marriage. Wednesday morning, I change my outfit 4 times. Too formal. Too casual. Too apologetic. Too defensive. I settle on jeans and the sweater my mother gave me last Christmas, before she stopped calling. Before I became someone she was disappointed in. The coffee shop is nearly empty when I arrive 15 minutes early. I order a tea I don't want and sit by the window, watching the street. When Rachel walks in, I barely recognize her. She looks older than she did at that last family dinner, more worn. She's lost weight, or maybe it's just that her face is drawn in a way that suggests she hasn't been sleeping well. We've both been destroyed by this, I think. Just in different ways. She sits across from me without ordering anything. Up close, I can see the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands are trembling slightly. Hi, I say, which is possibly the most useless thing I could say. Hi, she replies. She takes a breath. I'm not here because my parents made me come. I need you to know that. I'm here because my portfolio deadline is in 10 days, and my advisor called me yesterday and said that if I can't submit it, I lose my scholarship and probably my spot in graduate school. The guilt is immediate and overwhelming. Rachel. I'm not done, she says, and her voice is steady in a way that makes me feel worse. I'm not done, so please just listen. I've been thinking about a lot of things over the past few weeks. I've been thinking about why I called you those names, and honestly, I was being a bitch. I was being cruel and I knew it was cruel and I did it anyway because I was jealous. I blink. This is not where I expected this conversation to go. I was jealous, she continues, because you're married to my brother, and you have this life that looked settled. Adult. And I felt like I was failing at everything, and it felt good to make you feel bad too. It felt like leveling the playing field. But I knew about your miscarriage. Mark told my parents, and my parents told me, and I knew and I said those things anyway, and that was genuinely awful of me. I stole your laptop, I say quietly. That's also genuinely awful. Yes, it was, she agrees. She doesn't soften this. But here's the thing. I called you mom to hurt you, and you stole my laptop to hurt me back, and now we're both sitting here ruined by it. And I don't want to be ruined by this. I don't want to spend the next 10 years in a lawsuit with my brother's wife. I don't want to lose my scholarship because I'm too angry to figure out a solution. What's the solution? I ask. Rachel leans back in her chair. I talked to a computer repair place. They said that depending on what condition the hard drive is in, there's a decent chance they can recover most of my files. I don't know if it's all of them or just some, but apparently data recovery is a thing. Hope sparks in my chest, but I try to temper it. Your laptop was wiped before I sold it. I made sure of that. I didn't want. I know, Rachel says. Mark told me. But the thing about wiping a hard drive is that unless you've done it a specific way, using specific software, the data is still technically there, just marked as deleted. It's like erasing something from a notebook but the pencil marks are still there. How much would that cost? I ask. A lot, Rachel says. But my parents offered to pay for it. Which is interesting, because they also told me that I owe you an apology too, for being cruel, and that they were angrier about what I did to you than what you did to me. That's when I realized I needed to reach out. I feel something crack open in my chest. I'm so sorry. I know you are, Rachel says. And I'm sorry too. But we need to figure out if this even matters. We need to know if I can recover my portfolio before we can fix anything else. Can you understand that? I nod. I can understand that. What I can't quite grasp is that Rachel is being reasonable with me, when she would have every right to hate me. When I would have hated me. What happens now? I ask. Now, Rachel says, I go to the recovery place and we see what we can salvage. And if it works, we'll figure out the rest. But Jessica? We can't go back to where we were before. Even if I get my files back, we all did damage here that's going to take time to repair. I know, I say. I know that. She stands up to leave. I'm not forgiving you yet, she says. But I'm trying. And I think that might be enough to start with. Hashtag chunk 8. The data recovery takes 3 weeks. 3 weeks of radio silence from Rachel, of Mark and me moving around the house like ghosts, of me checking my phone obsessively for updates that don't come. I've stopped calling my mother. She hasn't called me either. The distance between us has calcified into something that feels permanent, and I'm not sure anymore who's supposed to bridge it first. I throw myself into therapy. My therapist, whose name is Dr. Chen, asks me a lot of questions about why I thought selling Rachel's laptop would make me feel better. I don't have a good answer. I tell her it wasn't about the money. I tell her it was about making someone else hurt the way I was hurting. She nods and makes a note and asks me if that worked. It didn't, I tell her. Of course it didn't. Revenge rarely does, she says gently. It just spreads the hurt around until everyone's drowning in it. Mark comes to one session with me. We sit on opposite ends of a couch and don't look at each other while I talk about how I felt unsupported, how his refusal to confront Rachel felt like a betrayal, how his disappointment in me now feels like the final rejection. He listens. When it's his turn, he says he was scared. Scared of making things worse with his family, scared that I was so fragile I might break entirely if he pushed back too hard, scared that nothing he did would ever be enough. I should have been brave instead of afraid, he says, and when he says it, his voice cracks. Dr. Chen asks him if he wants to sit closer to me. He does, and when he does, it's like a spell breaks. I realize we'd both been drowning separately when we could have been drowning together, holding on to each other instead of treading water alone. We don't fix everything in that session. We don't fix anything, really. But we start. The call comes on a Thursday morning. Rachel's number appears on my phone, and my heart rate spikes immediately. I'm at work, sitting in a meeting about quarterly projections, and I excuse myself without explaining where I'm going. Hello? My voice comes out small and scared. They got most of it, Rachel says without preamble. Not all of it. Some files were too corrupted. But 90% of my portfolio is recoverable. The technical team is pulling everything right now, and I should have everything back on a fresh drive by tomorrow. I sit down on the curb outside my office building. Rachel, that's... I know, she says. And then, quieter, it's more than I dared hope for. I'm going to be able to submit my portfolio. I'm going to be able to stay in graduate school. I'm so glad, I say, and I mean it with every cell in my body. I'm so incredibly glad. There's a pause. Then, my parents want to have a family dinner. Sunday. They want all of us there, you and Mark, me, my parents. They want to talk about what happened, and they want to do it together, and they want to move forward. What do you want? I ask carefully. I want that too, Rachel says. I want to move forward. I don't know if I'm going to be your best friend or anything. I don't know if we're going to be close. But I don't want to be enemies with someone I'm going to see at every family gathering for the rest of my life. So yes. Sunday dinner. Can you come? Yes, I say. Yes, of course. Sunday arrives with a kind of perfect autumn weather that feels like it's trying too hard, golden light, crisp air, the trees putting on a show of reds and golds like they're performing for an audience. Mark and I drive to his parents' house in near silence, but it's not the strained silence of the past month. It's a thinking silence. A preparing silence. His mother hugs me at the door. It's brief and careful, but it's a hug. His father shakes Mark's hand and squeezes his shoulder. Rachel is already there, helping her mother set the table. She looks different. Lighter somehow. When she sees me, she gives a small wave, and I wave back. Dinner is awkward at first. The kind of awkward where everyone is very focused on passing the salad and asking about work and talking about anything except the thing we all need to talk about. But then Mark's father sets down his fork and says, "We need to talk about what happened." His mother nods. I want to start by saying that Rachel told us how cruel she was being, and we were disappointed. We raised her better than that. I was cruel, Rachel says clearly. I knew it was cruel and I did it anyway, and I'm sorry. And I stole your laptop, I say, because someone needs to own that fully, and it might as well be me. I was angry and hurt, and instead of dealing with that in a healthy way, I lashed out. I violated your trust and your property, and no amount of apology erases that. But I am sorry. Deeply, genuinely sorry. Mark's mother reaches over and pats my hand. We all handled this terribly, she says. Including us. We should have done more to shut down the disrespect. We should have created a safer space. She looks at Mark. And you should have advocated for your wife. I know you were trying to keep the peace, but sometimes peace isn't possible unless you're willing to fight for it. Mark nods slowly. I know. I should have. I'm sorry. The dinner continues, and gradually the atmosphere shifts. We talk about what led Rachel to lash out, her struggles with graduate school applications, her sense of being a failure, her complicated feelings about growing up. We talk about my infertility, about how the grief of my miscarriage had been sitting in my chest like a stone, making me brittle and angry. We talk about how we'd all been hurting in isolation instead of reaching out. By dessert, Rachel and I are almost laughing about something inane, and Mark's mother is wiping her eyes, and his father is telling a story about when Mark and Rachel were children and they destroyed his office trying to build a fort. As we're leaving, Rachel walks us to the door. I'm submitting my portfolio next week, she tells me. My advisor thinks I have a really strong chance at the fellowship I was applying for. That's amazing, I say. I'm really proud of you. Thanks, she says. And then, hesitantly, maybe, after the graduate school craziness dies down, we could get coffee sometime? Not because we have to. Just because. I'd like that, I say, and I mean it. In the car on the way home, Mark reaches over and takes my hand. We drive in comfortable silence, the radio playing softly, the world dark and full of possibility. We're going to be okay, Mark says after a while. Yeah, I agree. I think we are. It won't be simple. There will be more conversations, more boundary setting, more careful navigation of what we all lost and what we might rebuild. But for the first time in months, I can imagine a future that doesn't involve resentment or regret as its permanent architecture. Sometimes, I think, the worst mistake you can make is the beginning of the road to becoming better. And sometimes, that's enough.